Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. As you can tell, I'm probably not in the UK at the moment recording this. I'm actually in my sister-in-law's dining room in Brisbane. And I've just had an amazing conversation with a wonderful woman who works for General Motors. In fact, she is the CEO of General Motors in Australia and New Zealand. And she's returned fairly recently from the United States, where she's worked for the last 10 years at the very tippy top of the General Motors Corporation. And they're just about to launch the Cadillac Lyriq in Australia, and we are driving it in a couple of weeks' time, and I've never been in one. I'm really excited to see it. So it was very interesting to catch up with her. We're in Australia, obviously, for the Everything Electric show that is on in March. There'll be more information about that in a moment, but it's been a really interesting visit because of the very rapidly shifting Australian automotive market. One of the things that we didn't mention in the recording, but is the introduction of the new vehicle efficiency standard that was brought into Australia literally a couple of weeks ago, which means that finally Australia is catching up with the vast majority of the rest of the world, other than Russia, who do have some standards on tailpipe emissions, on exhaust pipe gases. Finally here now, new cars have to tie in more tightly with that, which is what is also encouraging the enormously rapid uptake of electric vehicles in Australia. But we were here to discuss General Motors and their history and their incredible, achievements over the last over 100 years, and their role now in Australia in the very rapidly expanding Australian electric vehicle market. So that's what I'm here to talk about. Please do sit back and relax, and please welcome Jess Bala, CEO of General Motors in Australia and New Zealand, to the Fully Charged Show podcast. Love the Everything Electric show? Then join us live in Sydney in March, or London in April, or in Vancouver, Farnborough and Melbourne in September, October and November 2025. So Jess, thanks very much for going through the struggle and finding time to talk to us today. It's really good to be able to catch up with you. And also, I just want to, can we quickly go through General Motors' history? Because it's such a huge company with such an incredibly long history. And I know you've worked in the United States for quite a long time before returning to Sydney. Can you do like a bit of your history and the company history? Because it's
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thank you so much for having me. But yeah, you're right. It's amazing to think I hit 18 years with General Motors actually last week. So time really does fly when you're having fun. But I started back in 2007, straight out of university. So I studied commerce law. So I have a Bachelor of Law and a Bachelor of Marketing, essentially, and really started at Holden back then as part of GM as an intern in the after-sales space. So when I look back across my career after almost 2 decades, I've been lucky enough to really try a whole range of roles across the product planning and sales and marketing space. And you're right, back in 2013, I actually was given the opportunity to move over to Detroit to General Motors headquarters. And it was meant to be a 3-year assignment and actually turned into 10 years over there, and loved every minute of it, just being able to work at HQ of one of the biggest automotive companies in the world and just really get a really amazing understanding of the sheer scale and how far out in time we, plan products and for different markets across the range of brands and things that we have was really eye-opening and amazing, because you really get to play a role in shaping the future of the automotive industry and something that people, touch every day as part of their lives, and being able to have a role in that was really amazing. And definitely one of the highlights of my time over there was I was very fortunate and lucky enough to be made Mary Barra's Chief of Staff. And, she's one of, if not the most well-known automotive CEO, the first female CEO in the auto industry that we've seen. And having the privilege to sit in her senior leadership team meetings and watch that group of people make decisions that define the future of the company, whether it's 10, 15 years out or dealing with the day-to-day issues that pop up, was just an amazing experience, something that I've really brought home back here to Melbourne, Australia, where I moved back to be the MD of General Motors Australia and New Zealand just over a year ago now, in September of 2023, and now in the amazing position of being able to launch some amazing brands, with the Cadillac brand here, and also some really incredible products as well as we look to launch the GMC Yukon in a couple of months' time as well. So lots of exciting things happening for us here.
Right, because my knowledge of the Australian auto industry is fairly limited. But I know that GM you had factories here, Holden, and I've been in some old Holdens in my time, amazing Australian cars. But that was a GM company. But then I don't know when was that factory closed? It was some time ago. That's not recent, is it?
Yeah, Holden, under the GM parent company, had an amazing history here in Australia, and manufacturing was closed back in 2017. And obviously the brand was wound down a few years later. But there is, a bit of a misconception that GM left Australia, and that's actually not true at all. We've been here since the 1930s. We've just transitioned as a business from a manufacturer to now an importer, which is what we're doing under both the GM Specialty Vehicles or GMSV brand that we have, and now obviously introducing Cadillac as well as an all-EV luxury brand.
Right. Yes, because I'm very much looking forward to having a drive in that later on. That's the highlight of my trip this year. But then I think it's fascinating. The two sort of really big challenge. Well, one really big challenge is obviously China, but let's talk about that in a moment. But the Australian car market is quite unique, really, in the various areas that I've travelled around, and your knowledge of this will be much greater than mine. But it is because there really isn't any manufacturing in Australia anymore. Essentially, all cars here are imported. Am I wrong about that, or is that it feels like that? Certainly.
That's correct. Yeah, there is no local manufacturing of automotive vehicles in Australia anymore. But I guess one unique piece that ourselves here at GM and some of the other brands do is we have what we now call a remanufacturing process. So when you look at our trucks that we import, so the Silverado and soon to be also the GMC Yukon, they're actually remanufactured here on our line with our partner Walkinshaw and converted from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. So there is a sort of element of automotive manufacturing going on here, but just not in the traditional sense anymore.
So let's talk about the Cadillac, because I've not seen it. I've never been in a Cadillac in my life of any sort. I've seen them, obviously, but I've never been in one. So can you tell us a bit about that car? And that's already on the market in the United States. It's around and about.
It is, yes. So obviously the Cadillac brand has a really amazing history behind it. It's been around for over 120 years. It's one of the most iconic automotive brands. And even in countries like ours, where, to your point, it's never been officially on sale here. And that's something that we've really tried to lend into. And the new Cadillac Lyriq, which is an EV product, has been on sale in other parts of the world for a couple of years now. And we recently released it on sale here in Australia about 2 months or so ago now. And we've had some really amazing feedback, some great sales stories already. And we're very excited around how the brand is pivoting to this very much modern luxury flavour that we think really suits our buyers in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And what is interesting is that GM's history of involvement in electric vehicles is very long. So quite a lot of older manufacturers have sort of pivoted very recently to starting to make electric cars. But you were making them a long time ago. So I'm assuming that within the GM sort of engineering world, there's quite a lot of experience in building electric vehicles and all the systems that go with it, because it's a big change from a combustion engine and a gearbox and a transmission to an electric car. It's more than just the motor, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, GM's been building electric vehicles for some time. We had the Volt and then the Bolt that's on sale in the US right now, and it's been hugely successful. And one thing that the company is very, very good at is looking at how technology progresses it and then adapting it and expanding it from a efficiency standpoint as well. And now when you look at GM's EV offering, we have EVs available to customers on a very broad range across all of our brands globally, which means that we can offer EVs at very different price points with different technology offerings, different design aesthetics, things like that. So it really means that as a company, we're offering EVs across the whole range to make them accessible to a whole different, breadth of customer base as well.
And I mean, will you be doing, because obviously Cadillac is kind of top of the range luxury vehicle. Will you be bringing in your smaller and cheaper versions into Australia, into the Australian electric vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, for right now, we're very much focused on the Cadillac brand as an all EV brand for us here in Australia and New Zealand. And in just a couple of weeks, we're going to announce what that broader showroom looks like for Cadillac, which is really, really exciting. I'm excited for our customers and the market here to see what other offerings we're going to have. From a future planning standpoint for our market, the team and I are always in discussions with, global headquarters around what the right fit may be for our market here. We know that Australia is already one of the most competitive auto industries in the world. And so for us, it's all about really identifying the opportunity at hand for us and being able to make sure that we keep the customer at the center of everything that we're doing and being able to deliver vehicles to them that they may not have access to right now or not accessible, and just sort of really going after that white space and opportunity that we see as a company to bring something different to market for the customer.
And I mean, the other thing I was really interested to hear the decision making behind it was your direct to consumer sales. And I mean, I would love it if you could explain, because it's an area that I'm not familiar with, but if you could explain the difference between what I would imagine is a dealership and then what you're talking about here, which is direct to consumer. So is that something you're implementing in Australia?
Yeah, so our Cadillac brand will be available to customers through the direct-to-consumer model, and that essentially means that our customers can buy directly from us in-store or online, or have a combination of both. You might be a customer that wants to come in, talk to one of the sales team one-on-one, go for a test drive, but then complete your transaction online. So essentially, we really want to develop a process and a customer experience that is tailored to each individual customer and their needs and the level of involvement they want with us and vice versa. And that allows us to deliver a truly personalized but also consistent customer experience and sales process, something that's very much, around culture and connection and emotional connection with the Cadillac brand, and something that we're very proud of and had seen some pretty good success with even in its early days. And it also allows us, back to the earlier point about our market being so incredibly competitive and have so many brands on offer, it's a model that allows us to be very agile and nimble, so that as the market continues to shift, as customer needs change, the way that they want to interact with us change, it allows us to move with customer and market demands as well, and allows us to also be very innovative and try different things, which we're very excited about too.
And I'm just thinking, I can't help, because I'm very aware I've been in Australia now for about 3 weeks. I'm extremely aware of the staggering number of Chinese cars on the roads in Australia. But I think where the advantage you have with the Cadillac is it really stands out. It's not no one's going to look at a Cadillac and go, is that Chinese? That's the one thing you can be sure of. And you've got a secure thing. But that is in terms of the global automotive industry, I would imagine that, from everything I've heard for the last couple of years, the kind of expansion of Chinese car manufacturing and also exporting of Chinese cars is having an impact around the world. I mean, it's not in the United States, but certainly in Europe, in the UK, it definitely is. I'm very aware of it. And in Australia, very, very much so. I mean, there's lots of Chinese cars here that I've never seen before anywhere else. So they're clearly coming here. I mean, I don't know what you can say about it, but I mean, it is a fascinating shift. If you think back even 10 years, you wouldn't ever think of discussing the Chinese automotive industry. It just didn't really, we weren't aware of it,
Yeah, I think what those automotive brands are doing for the industry right now is really exciting. The level of technology and change that they're driving really is amazing for the customers, and it's providing them with a whole really like broad range of choice, which is never a bad thing, but also what it's allowing us to do is really focus in and hone on what we think our greatest benefits are as a brand, both from a branding standpoint and for the customer as well when it comes to the vehicles. And to your point, Cadillac is such a well-known brand. You know, people know what it is, they've heard of it. So we do automatically have, you know, a bit of an advantage with all of the new brands coming to market in Australia and New Zealand. But we love the competitiveness nature of our market. It gives us something to really allow us to hedge our bets on and know where we're going to win, and makes our goal and our targets very, very clear to us, because we know exactly what we need to do to set ourselves apart from all the brands that are on offer in our part of the world.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's a really good positive approach to it, because I think in a way that is what I've felt is it's made, particularly I'm very much more familiar and in touch with the European brands, you know, the likes of BMW and VW and Audi, and they know they've got to raise their game, because there's this very big new competitor that is very, it's becoming very popular. I mean, it's a common sight, but that's not really going to affect the US market currently. I don't think it's going to affect it at all, is it? All we hear all the time, if we review a Chinese car, all we hear is people in America going, we won't be able to get that. I wish I could get one of those, so they're not, it's very specific to this country, really. I think the Chinese invasion, if you like, that's the wrong word to use. But the emergence of the Chinese brands is a huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it hasn't changed what our focus is as a company. For GM in Australia and New Zealand, we're still very much about making sure we can deliver the products that our customers are asking for and really go after that white space. And when you look at what brands we offer as a company here in Australia and New Zealand and the range of vehicles that we offer, we're catering to a very different target market these days than what we have done in the past, and think that it's a real positive and something that we can really harness to ensure our success as well.
And I mean, is your general impression of the Australian response to the Lyriq, to the fact that it's an electric vehicle, has that been quite positive, or have you had kickback going, I want one with a V8?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, we always get questions around the models that are available in other parts of the world as well, but I think that's actually a really positive thing, because it's just highlighting again that people are familiar with the Cadillac brand, but also recognizing the amazing job that the Cadillac team in the US have done when it comes to flowing technologies and some of that really iconic content and design aesthetics that are in the older Cadillacs, including even some of the ICE vehicles that are available now, into the next generation of vehicles, which is into the EV space. So when you look at a Lyriq, you can see some of that heritage scripture, some of the design cues that have been carried through the generations into the new vehicles, and you combine that with the new EV technology, the amazing performance, just the design detail. We've had amazing feedback from people that have seen the Lyriq, and something that's been very common is they think it looks beautiful in pictures, and then, which is absolutely true, but then when you see it in person, you're blown away even further. And those lucky few that have been able to drive it as well, when you experience that almost instantaneous torque and the speed of the vehicle combined with just the ride and handling, it really is a true luxury offering that we're really proud of.
And also, I mean, I'm judging by the battery size, it's got very adequate range for the Australian market as well, because that's the first thing I always hear here about electric vehicles. Australia's really big.
It is very true. I mean, the Lyriq on a full charge can get you up to 530 kilometres, which is an amazing amount of range, and to be honest is further than a lot of the fuel economies we see of ICE vehicles. But not only that, with the fast charging, you can get up to 131 kilometres in just 10 minutes. So yes, we do have some very unique geographical challenges that we face in our country, but when you combine the range and the performance of the Lyriq, plus hopefully what we're going to see with infrastructure improvements that tackle some of those challenges, we think that the Lyriq will do very well here.
No, I mean, in my experience of driving electric vehicles in Australia, it's I would say 7 years ago that Australia was way behind the UK. Now it's catching up, and in some cases overtaking very, very rapidly. It's an amazing shift. It's really, really noticeable. Yeah. So the one thing I wouldn't mind just discussing, because I think it's interesting, is, and I'm loath to mention gender because I don't think it matters, but it is interesting that the boss of GM, as you mentioned, and you, two women are really at the very top of a massive global corporation, is still relatively unusual. I mean, when I think of the amount of men I've talked to about cars and about manufacturing vehicles, it's mostly men. So it's a fascinating change in that. And it's such a good, what an amazing opportunity for you, as you mentioned earlier on, to be working with Mary Barra in that close connection. And then presumably was it a mutual choice for you to return to Australia? I mean, she was supporting you in doing that, I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned, working with and getting to know Mary is absolutely one of the highlights of my career, and she has just done amazing things with our company. And in addition to her, there's some amazing women that are in very senior leadership positions back at HQ in Detroit as well, which is it's motivating for a lot of the females within not just our company but the industry as well. And yeah, for my own career personally, it was some discussions that I had with some of my leaders and sponsors and mentors back in the US around, I've been over there for 10 years now. I have a young family, just wanting to spend some time back in Australia. And my previous role in the US was leading the product team for Cadillac. So it just felt like a really perfect time to come home and be able to lead the awesome team here with the introduction of the Cadillac brand and continue the GMSV success that we've had. And to be honest, I love being a female in this position. I love being able to share my story and hopefully, continue to change that narrative that's already had a really positive shift, but just sort of really emphasize that, females and women can hold leadership positions in traditionally more male-dominated industries. And it's something that's very important to me, especially as I've got a young daughter and she's, very proud of everything that she gets to hear that I get to do, and really want to share that message with her that whether you're, what gender you are, you can do anything you want to be. And as long as you've got the passion and the tenacity, you can succeed at anything you want to succeed at. So it's a very exciting time to be back at home, close with family, on home soil, leading such an awesome company and an amazingly talented team here as we go into some really exciting new territories for the company here locally.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an amazing, I mean, I do think the one thing that I'm constantly aware of is that, say you go back 20 years and you think about the electricity grid and the transport infrastructure. I mean, it was important, it was critically important, but it wasn't terribly exciting. Now, if I go to a conferences about the energy infrastructure in Europe, and it's fascinating and challenging, and it's really difficult, and there's really lots of problems, but it's the people involved, and it is interesting. There's way more women at those conferences than I would have expected as an outsider from that industry, to go and see what's happening. It's very exciting. And I think very much the automotive industry has gone through an absolute, it's going through a big revolution. And who knows? I do not know how it's going to turn out, but it's definitely going through big changes, isn't it?
No, it is. And one thing that we've always talked about at the company, globally, is this feels like the biggest transition in the auto industry from, horse and cart to, to ICE powertrains, and now into, it's not just, ICE to EV, but all other propulsion types, whether it's hydrogen and other technologies. But beyond that, it's into, autonomous driving and just being able to look at where GM's heading and be involved in what the transport industry, really, and the automotive industry is going to look like in 10 years' time is going to be vastly different to what we see today, and even more different to what we saw 20 years ago. And it's really exciting just to see the sort of technology that these companies are coming out with, and the impact they're going to have on people's lives as well is really, really interesting and very exciting too.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the frustrations is that I would love to be able to sit in on the board meetings when you were talking about what you're going to be doing. I know you can't talk about it, but, that is really, those conversations are fascinating when you hear snippets of it, or the very fact that it takes place, that you are obviously you've got to, a company that size has got to think 10, 15 years in advance. I mean, I'm assuming that can you give us some background on because you're very involved with the Lyriq, but the kind of the time it took for someone to do a drawing and go, can we have it a bit like this, to when it's actually being manufactured. That's a very long, complicated process.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally it would normally take us sort of, we would say around 6 years from the start of the vehicle development process to start of production and start of sales. But I would say over the last probably 5 to almost even 10 years, that process has really sped up. And I think that is, evidence of just how the industry is changing as well. You need to, with the shifts in technology, you look at what things like smartphones have done for the way that we use technology and so forth. We need to be able to get to market faster than we traditionally used to, because customer needs are changing, their expectations are changing. Combine that with, all of the competitiveness that we've already talked about. It just drives not just the auto industry, but I think many industries in this sort of technology space to move a lot faster, which is exciting because it drives more innovation, more out-of-the-box thinking, and more, I don't want to say risk-taking necessarily, but the ability to try something different, which is what is making the industry shifts as amazing as they are right now.
And I mean, I think that the things that when I first just read the stats, I will experience it obviously soon, but when I read the stats of the Cadillac, it was the couple of things that really jump out that are critically important. I mean, and you've mentioned it, the speed of charging is a real game changer. And I've only experienced it a couple of times with certain brands where there is high speed charging. And after having lived for 15 years with the first generation of electric cars, that you can rapid charge. It's not very rapid. And you'll get used to that, and you go, I've got a half hour wait or a 3/4 of an hour wait, and then you charge a new one, and you go, oh my goodness, I just need a coffee, a comfort break. There's not time; it's done. It feels so fast, and you've really pulled it out of the bag with that in the Cadillac. The speed of charging is really impressive.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we've done a lot of research in this space, and I spent time at several clinics, back in my time in the US, talking to EV owners and the lifestyle changes they make when you're owning an EV, and what we can do to make those changes more efficient for them, because we know generally people are relatively time poor these days. So the more efficient we can be with them, the better. And it really becomes a point of differentiation when you're shopping for an EV to compare those sorts of stats that weren't really on customers' radars previously. So anything we can do to speed that up, to your point, is definitely a benefit for us. And you combine that with some of the amazing features that the Lyriq has, whether it's, the 33-inch interior screen, we've got an amazing sound system with 19 AKG speakers, all of those little design elements, interior lighting, things like that. It becomes the full package. And that's, again, why we think that the Lyriq will do so well here as a niche luxury brand and really offering something very different.
And then the other thing I read, and I don't know I don't quite understand it, but is the car capable of making exterior sounds, for example, when you're reversing or going forwards? But one of the things I saw was, I think it was on a blog, but does it make a didgeridoo sound? Which I thought, I don't know. Is that true?
Yeah, it is true. So we love that little piece of info here in Australia. But yes, when you're reversing the Lyriq, obviously when you look at EVs, they're almost relatively silent. So from a safety standpoint, to make sure that pedestrians and others can hear EVs, you'll probably notice it more now, but they all make some sort of hum almost so that they're audible. And the Lyriq, the sound that the Lyriq makes was modelled off a didgeridoo. Yep. So we do love that. There's little bits of, Australia in the car. That combined with, a lot of Aussies worked on the car back in Detroit from a design standpoint, or myself in the product space and on the engineering side. So we love knowing that there are little Aussie touches in the car, even though it's such an iconic American brand. We've got some little Aussie flavours in there as well.
Very good. That is great. Because I was almost embarrassed to ask you that. I thought that can't be right, but I think that's fantastic. I can't wait to hear the didgeridoo reversing sound. That's
no, really not at all.
So the other experience I had when we were in Vancouver last year at our show in Vancouver, for the first time in my life I drove a Hummer, but I drove the Hummer EV, which was a test drive at our show, and there was a huge queue, huge waiting list. Everyone wanted to have a go in the Hummer, and it is. I mean, it's bonkers by British terms, but it is an incredibly impressive vehicle to drive in. It's just like being in a ship. It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know anything about its sales. It's been a success in the USA, has it? Is it a successful vehicle?
It is. I mean, it was sort of one of the first, next generation EVs that GM released. And what that vehicle does from a technology standpoint really showcases what General Motors can do. If you think about, crab walk, where the wheels go on an angle so that you can go off-roading and squeeze through small spaces in a vehicle of that size is just incredible. And then I'm not sure if you had a chance to experience Watts to Freedom, which is, with the instant torque of that vehicle and the speeds it gets to very quickly. It's just incredible. And I think once people get in it and they do drive it, it is also a very niche vehicle, but what it can do is just mind-blowing and really is an amazing showcase of the talent that GM has and what we're able to produce when it comes to the new vehicles that are coming to market.
No, it was very, very impressive. And we did some crab steering on a polished concrete floor in a building, and it was just like, we just couldn't believe what was happening. It was just, it's extraordinary, truly extraordinary technology.
It is amazing. Yeah. It is absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Really hope you enjoyed that. We'll be having lots of exciting guests in upcoming weeks on the Fully Charged Show podcast. Please do subscribe. Please do tell your mates about it. We have a very wide range of topics that we cover on this channel and on this particular podcast. I don't even know who's coming next week, but someone really interesting for sure. Anyway, that's all for now. As always, if you have been, thank you for watching.